former commissioning editor of the series, to share with us her perspectives.
Thank you very much. James, thank you very much for a wonderful rendition. James was the first editor of the series. I was the last editor before Heinemann closed its doors in 2002 when I was made redundant. What is the African Writers Series to me? The African Writers Series was the making of me. It is the finest finishing school, and where I worked for 12 years with a team of people who operated to very high professional standards. According to Charles Larson, those who say that nothing good has come out of Africa have not read the continent's writers. Barely 50 years ago, writing from Africa was unheard of in the wider Western world. The history of the African Writers Series encapsulates the history of Africa's struggle to rid itself of colonial domination and post-colonial oppression by presenting to the world stories written by Africans in which Africans themselves were the subjects of their own histories. The AWS was therefore positioned as the vanguard of the movement for change, for representing an African identity in the modern world. As the power and influence of the series grew, the AWS became universally acknowledged as the cannon and carrier of this struggle, being its most viable public voice in creating an international audience and getting the message across to it. I think you will agree with me if I say it is therefore no exaggeration to claim that the African literature could not have attained its present form without the pioneering role of the African Writers Series. Let me just step back in time a bit and quote the late Alan Hill, who James Carey has also quoted in his book, In Pursuit of Publishing. This charts the history of his formative years, forged in the strict tradition of English nonconformist radicalism. In recounting his experiences that became the driving force for his vision in starting the African Writers Series, he recalls, and I quote, "As I now discovered when I visited Nigeria for the first time in 1959, British publishers operating within West Africa sold mainly textbooks and regarded the territory as a place where books were sold rather than as a source for new writers. Moreover, the books sold there were almost all written by British authors and produced in Britain. They were taking money out of West Africa and putting nothing back in the way of investment in local publishing and encouraging of local authors." Chinua Achebe, who was the first series editor, chose the first 100 titles in the series, a job he performed for 10 years without pay. The launching of the series, he said, and I quote, was like a starting pistol to African writers, for which the writers themselves were waiting on the starting line. The race has continued unabated to display the best that has been thought and expressed from Africa. It is difficult for people of color to get into the world of publishing and stay in it. But this was made possible for me by one person, the late John Watson. He was the sales director at Heinemann when I was employed in 1991, and he was instrumental in me becoming what I am today. Like Alan Hill, he traveled the length and breadth of Africa. He loved Africa, and he sold African Writers Series books into the ministries of education for curriculum adoptions. Most Africans of my generation, and even before, who went to secondary school and beyond, would have cut their literary teeth on the AWS books. So what has been the impact of the series today? Again, I go back to the late Alan Hill, who said, probably the most significant achievement of the AWS was to alter the world's perception of Africa and its people. Working for the AWS has brought me into contact, very close contact with some of our best writers, and I feel a great sense of pride in working with people like the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, Udi Wathianko, Ayebia with reservations, Jack Mapanje, and so many other people. I also met and networked with African literary specialists on the continent, including Henry Chikava from Nairobi and Ayebia from Nigeria. These people were instrumental in finding and bringing authentic voices to the African Writers Series. But above all, it was the African women who I read and networked with who inspired me. I have fond memories of working with these incredibly resourceful African women who achieved extraordinary things in challenging environments. They include meeting Amartide for the first time at the Africa Center, going on tour with Uchi Amecheta, Yvonne Vieira, Nawal El Sedar with Asia Jiba, discussing the importance of translations with Wangui Wagoro. Touring the UK with Titi Dangaranga, I also appreciated the opportunity to consult with fellow publishers including Margaret Busby, Vienna Wilkins, Jessica Huntley, Ella Alfred, Elise Dillsworth, Black women who have been in publishing a lot longer than I have. All of these experiences with the work of these writers and my personal and professional interaction with them was simply a reaffirmation of my own experiences growing up as a girl in Africa. I could identify in the deeply representative work of these writers and through their female protagonists, the mothers, the aunties, and the grandmothers who nurtured me, and the sisters and siblings and friends with whom I had attended school. I will cut it short and come to the conclusion. It is therefore no surprise that when I started Ayebia in 2003, one of the first books I published was the African Love Stories Anthology, edited by Amartide. I wanted to show the world, I wanted to let the world know that Africans too fall in love, and they fall in love very deeply. And sometimes they fall out of love, and it's okay, because that's what we do, and it's universal. And the book went on to become a huge success, and one of the short stories won the Kay Prize for African Writing in 2007. My aim for starting Ayebia is that I believe Africans must speak for themselves, especially African women. I would like to end by a quote here that Chimamanda, who is sitting not too far away from us, gave for this book that Ayebia published this year. She says, and I quote, I occupy the place of a Black African happy feminist because writers like Amartide came before me. Her storytelling nurtured mine. Her worldview enlarged and validated mine. I feel a deep gratitude to her for her writing and for her wisdom. I am delighted to recommend Diplomatic Hands as a must-read. I would like to end by saying that I think it's altogether fitting that an African woman, Chimamanda Ngozi, is doing the keynote. Thank you.